Welcome to Just a Tip with Jake and Timmy. What's going on, guys? Jake here with Uncommon EDC. Welcome to Just a Tip. Tim is out again this episode, but I'm joined by Donnie from Jack Wolf Knives. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, of course. We finally got the chance to meet in person at a Blade Show. That was a really fun time, but felt like I had already known you from interacting with you online.
Yeah, right. Blade Show was I'd never been to Atlanta, so that was like so mind blowing for me, and it's cool to, you know, meet everyone face to face.
Yeah, were there a lot of people from the Facebook group that stopped by the booth?
There was a handful, maybe five or six.
Oh, okay.
I was kind of surprised there. I mean, it's hard to trace so many. I mean, it's a worldwide group. It's crazy, and
Right.
so I think, oh, just go to Atlanta. It's like, well, that's halfway across the country for a lot of these guys. So.
Yeah, exactly. I know I wanted to do more of like the Facebook group meetups. We did one with at the ProTech booth, but it would have been cool to do one at the Jack Wolf booth too. Maybe something for next year.
Yeah, we'll time it out next time. That's a good idea.
Yeah, for sure. But wanted to have you on this week in particular, which is why we're doing an extra show this week to talk about the Benny. We got a third locking model, right?
Yeah, that's it, man. Number three. I guess it's our fourth run because we did
Right.
the gunslinger twice. But yeah, we're really, really happy with how these turned out. I mean, man, it's like I don't know. It's the one that was really like dying for a bolster lock version because it's just like the big, beefier tip. Um,
Right.
the whole thing. It's not super common. The old school Laney's clip pattern.
Right.
You don't see a lot of like modern interpretations of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and this one it feels a lot different than the previous two. It just feels a lot beefier, more like it was built to be a modern knife to me.
Yeah, I don't have the after hours with me, but that one was like is just such a razor blade,
Right.
which is it's a cool knife. But I feel like this is what people are used to when they think of
Right.
having a modern folder.
Right.
I mean that's pretty hefty for us. Obviously, with the saber grind, it's still really thin behind the edge, but I think it translates really well. The action is much heavier than the gunslinger. The detent stiffer, those kind of things. So
Yeah, I think the big difference for me between the three was the drop on them. So they
mhm.
all open pretty similar, but this one just kind of drops shut. It's got that weightier blade where it just kind of falls on you, and then you can
Yeah.
just roll it the rest of the way. My after hours is kind of like that because I have it on skiffs. And again,
Mhm.
it was like the skiff bearings didn't really affect the opening action, but it did affect that drop. But this one still requires a little bit of a shake for me.
Okay. Yeah, I put skiffs on one of my bennies, the White Storm, because I like to take at least one of my knives and do the pocket clip delete.
Ooh, yeah.
It's pretty seamless, especially like on that one, like with the gray. But I put skiffs in, and like I don't know, like this one, I didn't notice a difference. I don't know if that's just me, not being, not noticing, but
Yeah.
I think with
Yeah,
these
that
they like will do the over the top flip really well.
exactly. And that's why you're on this one and Ben's on lefties. If you heard you say the skiffs don't make a difference, he might have kicked you
Yeah,
off.
right. I'll get kicked off of Lefty Stream if I say that.
Yeah, exactly. But honestly, I didn't notice much difference on the deployment either. It was just on the drop shot. It just kind of
Mm.
falls a little bit faster for me.
I think
Um,
there's break in. If some of these blades have, I guess it's like tumbled or coatings. I don't know if that affects it at all.
yeah. Yeah, I haven't done any of the pocket clip deletes on any of the locking models yet. I just did on my Vero Neuron, the double detent. I just did that right before we went on the stream, actually. But I've left all the
Nice.
pocket clips so far. But I do like that they come with those plugs.
It's kind of a little, Ben knows that's like, okay, maybe 1% actually do it. But, it's just kind of that nod to the slip joint, the guys in us. And it
Yeah,
translates
exactly.
pretty well. Like I mean, this carries pretty nicely. I have an old Northwoods leather slip. Just
Oh,
drop
yeah.
it in my pocket. It's just kind of a little extra thing, kind of cool.
Yeah. And is that the same size slip that you're using for the slip joints? Because this
Well,
seems so much bigger to me.
Yeah, we have four different sizes, and this is the like XL of Troy's. And as you can
Right.
see, it's I mean, you got quite a bit sticking out the top there. But it works. It works pretty nice.
Yeah. Matches that one perfectly too.
Yeah, I dig it.
Anna so asked, what got you into making locking knives? Do you know what went into the initial gunslinger?
I know Ben, like the gunslinger goes all the way back to Blade Show of last year.
Yeah.
That's when he was doing it, or when it came out. So really, even a year before that. So that the whole locking knife thing for us has really been like 6 months into when we started. He knew that, hey, let's be real, the 99% of the market is locking knives, maybe even more. Honestly, most people, I mean, that's what we want. And
Right.
I'm a slip joint guy, but I also, I mean, where I started was with locking knives. So Ben knew that these would translate really well and also be something pretty different. You don't see a lot of higher end modern interpretations of old school patterns.
Right.
So I think it was kind of a win-win. They you have the popularity of the original slip joint patterns, and then hey, like let's have a dual carry. A lot of us carry two knives anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And then
Um,
three with the fixed blade.
that's it. Yeah, we have three now.
Yeah, I'm pretty consistent with the locking and the slip joint. I try and carry a fixed blade also, but like days like
Mhm.
today where I didn't leave the house, just like left to walk my dog, I'm wearing basketball shorts. Like, no way I'm carrying a fixed blade on top of that. But if I
Right.
get fully dressed for the day, I try and carry all three.
Yeah, I'm surprised how much I'm carrying the pocket fixed blade. Like I wasn't, like convinced. Like
Right.
why is this a thing? Why do we need this? But really, like I have these, I think it's off the grid pants, and they have like a really good spot for a pocket fixed blade sheath,
Yeah.
and it's so handy. Like you don't need to open it; it's right there, ready to go. And we are dropping some of these sheaths pretty soon that actually have no clip.
Oh, nice.
I know that seems odd, but like this is just so thin. I mean, it can go right in your pocket, um, and it works really well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's perfect. Any
So we'll be
plans
doing.
to do a brown leather also?
I don't know if we've really talked about swapping it up. I think we wanted. I think it was like that contrast, the black and white thread primarily. But changing up the leather is a good idea. At least do maybe two colors, black and brown.
Right. Yeah.
So
Exactly. Exactly.
good
So,
idea.
I was gonna say last month we started seeing the exclusive model drop at different dealers. So Austin
Mhm.
over at TPK, he's been on the show. He had the abalone. I was able to pick one of those up. So what about this month? We swapped to a new dealer this month, and that should be going forward, right?
Yeah, I think this is a really special thing we were doing this month with DLT. So this is going to be right at DLT Trading. I know a lot of you guys really dig them. Jason over there is so cool. Here we actually did something interesting. As you guys know, we've messed around with some different finishes like blast and tumble on the blade. Um, but we did that on the screws, the blade, but then we did a DLC coated frame, but that's been blackwashed. So that's
Nice.
also been tumbled. So we kind of have two different like contrasting tumbles here.
Right.
And it worked for some reason. Ben credited it to me for some reason. I think I said, "Hey, let's try that," and I don't really remember saying that, but um, evidently I did, and it turned out pretty cool along with the Altum look.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. One thing I liked on the Mars Valley one actually was the two-tone blade.
Yeah, so that was a
So
really nice feature of the original Benny's clip is on the saber grind on the flats, it's stone washed, and then machine satin or belt satin there on the saber grind or the hollow part of the grind. So it just translated really nicely on the Benny's clip. And I think in that model, all five were belt satin. And like we have to do at least several and belt satin for the Benny, because it's a cool feature having that two-tone look.
Right. Yeah, really like it.
There it's kind of can be seen as well.
Yep, super clean.
Thank you.
Yeah, so with these exclusives, are you working with the dealers to kind of pick them out ahead of time, or are they picking from one of the five kind of finishes? Because I know like the planning stages of coming up with the five variations happened so long ago that might be tough to allow
Yeah,
them to, I guess, choose themselves.
it's definitely something that requires a lot of planning. I always tell people, like, I feel like we're like working on 6 different time zones. We're thinking really a year and a half out, and then we're thinking 6 months out, and then 3 months out, and then next release, this release, last releases. It's just kind of crazy to keep track of. But with the dealer exclusives, yeah, we need to make those decisions beyond 6 months from now.
Right.
So we let people know, hey, we have these models coming out tentatively. These are what we're doing. We have these 4. We have all of these options to choose from with finishes. Knock yourself out. Go crazy. What would you guys like to see? And what's really neat is these dealers have been sinking in. This one particularly with DLT, they gave the ball to us, like, hey, do something wild for us. But Austin wanted to do that abalone, for instance.
Right.
Some of them in the ones we're doing in the future, those dealers specifically were like, oh, we want to do this and this and this. Can you do this? No. Okay, let's try this. Like, it kind of creates a little extra. It does create a little extra work for us, but it's worth it because it's, you get that excitement from them too.
Right.
So you'll see some pretty cool stuff down the road. Just unique materials, different things.
For sure. One thing I'm kind of looking forward to, and I don't have any insider information here, so this isn't hinting at anything, but a lot of these dealers, when they do their exclusives, they'll repeat them. So like we see the Rec exclusive with the avocado, or the Scorpion, or the DLT with like the purple and black Spyderco's. It'll be interesting when you get around to round 2 if we see different knives with the same finishes.
That's a really good thought. I didn't think about that. We have a lot of dealers, and obviously, the dealer exclusives aren't mandatory for each dealer. So
Right.
who knows? Maybe next year, yeah, Austin will do another run of a slip joint or a locking knife that has abalone on it. I mean, that would be really cool.
Right. And then when you see like the Jack Wolf with abalone, it's like a TPK thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's
Yeah, I
some
know.
continuity there, I guess.
Yeah, we try not to nail down a particular combo. For instance, like Ultim, like we did Ultim on the fixed blade, just
Right.
last month. We're not going to say DLT only can
Right.
do Ultim, but yeah, like it will become synonymous with that dealer, I hope. And
Exactly.
maybe even this, two-tone kind of look might be in, for DLT in the future if they want to do it.
Exactly. There was a poll, I think, before this one dropped, before you even announced the Benny, about locking models and which one needs the locking treatment next. Who won that one? Like, what was the consensus?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think it was a toss-up between the Vampire and the Venom, and then it was really funny. The Benny, I think, was like third, maybe even
Oh,
second.
okay.
It was like second or third. And it was like, yes, like we picked a good one to put out.
Yeah.
I think that what's cool though, Ben pointed it out that they were none of them were empty. So it wasn't
Right.
like everyone wanted just this one. Everyone wanted to see a lot of them, so that was
Right.
exciting.
Yeah, I think the Vampire was leading when I saw the poll also, which is an interesting one. I can actually picture that one as like a locking knife because I've never seen a locking knife with a swell center. It's like a slip joint
Oh
thing so
yeah,
often.
yeah.
I mean,
I
I
hope.
could see it working. It's just never seen
Yeah,
anything like it.
and that is something that I didn't realize before working with Ben. Just the effort that goes into making that kind of thing happen, especially if you're taking a slip joint and trying to make it into a modern folder. It's not just okay computer, make this a flipper knife, please. I
Right,
wish it was that
exactly.
easy. there were so many different variables. Just getting the Benny's clip right into the Benny. Um, some translate simply and quickly. Some we need to make a decent amount of changes internally, especially.
Right. And how much of that is like the sizing of it? Do you go up to allow for more space for the internal mechanisms, or is it just it feels more natural with a locking knife? They're typically a little bit bigger.
No, that is something we have to think about. I know for the size, like we try to pick that Goldilocks size, nothing too giant, nothing too tiny. Our slip joints are already at that smaller size. So really, like
Right.
if we made this, for instance, smaller, and here's the comparison of the Benny's clip next to the Benny. Not drastically different, really.
Right.
So if we made, for instance, the modern version the same size as this, well, then if we do release another round of Benny's clip slip joints, well, maybe it's not as compelling to want to have both or carry both. But I think a smaller locking knife would be really cool. But you are getting into some you're getting really tight with our bearings are already real. I think the bearings are like some of the smallest they make
Right.
for locking knives. The pivots are fairly small, so I think we could probably do it. I think we should do some smaller versions, but right now that Goldilocks size, I think everyone's. If anything, we've gotten more requests for larger.
Right.
And I think the Benny will really,
Yeah, it feels like a substantial knife. What is it overall? Like
oh, it's a good
7.6 or something
question.
like that. It's pretty large.
I'm not a good stats guy, but yeah, it's a
Sorry.
decent amount bigger. It was funny. Bo Brown, the 7 foot dude, you see him around
Right.
in EDC World. He's like, "Oh, that's the one I want to get because it's the biggest one." So
Right. Exactly.
hopefully, if it's good enough for him, then it'll be good enough for some of the bigger guys. I have XL to double XL in some gloves, and I mean, I just have longer fingers, but
Right.
it's pretty. It fits, and there's plenty of room.
Yeah, I can spread out on the handle, all four fingers wrapped around there. I'm not cramped or anything like that. So it's definitely a little bit over 7.5. I think I just looked it up. So
Oh,
just
okay,
a hair
yeah.
over.
It's probably good for me to have the website in the background as well, but
Got a question. I know you're not going to be able to give a direct answer to, but we'll ask it anyway. When's the next fixed blade coming out? So
no,
I'm guessing we might be able to get something of like it's in the works. You know what it will be, maybe.
no, that's a really good question. I think the next fixed blade that comes out, I don't think anyone will really be expecting what's going on. It's hard to predict this, and really, as you know, like even with the first Gunslinger release, we're pretty conservative with it. We didn't really have any plans for another locking knife until we knew for a fact that people dug it. You
Right.
know, to you know, it was a happy accident. It was a surprise how well the Gunslinger did. People really, really, sunk their teeth into it. It took us time to do another re-release, so it'll be similar with the fixed blade. We wanted to make sure people liked it. We were
Right.
honestly really worried. We're like, oh man, like are people going to dig the size? I mean,
Right.
that was kind of a thing. A lot of people even mentioned the size of like, oh, it's a little small, but overall, people love this thing. This was
Yeah.
like went over really, really well. So I'm
I think it
hoping.
came at the right time too. It
Mm,
seems like smaller fixed blades are really in right now. I know that's kind of what I'm into is smaller pocketable fixed blades, but just in general, I see a lot of people are really starting to get into the smaller ones that they can carry on day to day.
yeah, and I think like there's not a ton that are in like production. You see a lot more fixed blades in smaller batches,
Right.
maybe even from like a custom maker. But um, I think the price was right. You have a lot of that customized feel because I mean this is pretty unusual
Yeah.
in a production knife. So like I think once we even put the lanyard on it too, we noticed like right away it's like this is a good size too. Like I said, I have big hands and I like it being 3 fingered because then I don't have a giant handle sticking out. But with the
Right.
lanyard, I still have the grip with my pinky can grab it. So
Yeah, one of the things I saw at like Blade Show, I think it was Kaiser.
mm,
Half of their table was like small fixed blades that were under 7 inches. They had so many in the lineup to release over the rest of the year.
whoa.
It was just kind of super leaning into it. So
We're
definitely going to
knife
be
guys.
interesting.
What can we say? Like we like variety, and man, if it's a cool knife, we like it. So
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of, so obviously you carry a lot of Jack Wolfs, but I know before Jack Wolf, you were into other knives. You're still into other knives. What else are you carrying besides the
oh
Benny
man,
and lately?
I know you were going to ask that. I've always been Spyderco guy. Really dug Spyderco. I think they are the knife guys, knife company. Really, just with the variety and the
Right.
price range, the steels. I mean, I liked it. They were lefty friendly because I'm
Right.
left-handed.
Oh, you and Ben are
So
both lefty. You know, like a whole
yeah,
lefty company going.
yeah, we do. Yeah, it's that was a prerequisite for the hire. So,
Exactly.
um, so anything like I liked Benchmade too because of the access lock. That was good for a left-handed carry. Chris Reeve does all their models are available in left hand,
Right.
which is a big deal. So those companies were I mean, I'm still a huge fan of all of them. I got to meet Tim at Blade Show. I got to geek out and be like, Tim, it's nice to meet you, bro.
Yep.
um, and I mean, just anything that's like really strikes me. And here's a superlative. I mean, here's a like these guys crush
Oh
it. The
yeah.
Comanche, this thing is giant for a slip joint, and I mean, what a cool design.
Yep.
Um, so
Yeah, I
neat.
love superlative.
Yeah, the dude, like I got meeting Javi and Enrique. Like Ben and Enrique are like our buddies. People will even compare our knives. Oh, we're so similar, but it's because Ben loves Enrique. They're bros, you
Right.
know. And then both Enrique and Ben like are such big fans of the modern, twist on the classic patterns. So they're both kind of doing the same kind of thing a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, they have different, obviously similar like build quality, similar cover options. I think the big difference with Superlative is it feels like they're like the only company making tactical slip joints, which makes no sense, obviously, but they look so wicked, so aggressive.
Oh yeah, like even so, I think one of their models had like a serrated blade and stuff like
Yeah,
that. That was cool. I mean, this
yeah,
is
that
pretty.
Cruisador.
Yeah, that's the one. Have you seen? I think it's Heretic. Heretic has a slip joint run.
Yeah, I have it. I don't have it on the table with me. The Jin.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there were some of those that look pretty tactical looking too, and it's just like what?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
so
Exactly.
cool. But yeah, that
Skibby's
was
in
the
the
thing. That's
chat.
really what. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say Skibby's in the chat asking Spider who. I know he just ordered some scales for his pair too, also. But I was telling Donnie I swapped out my pair two scales for these AWT blue topo, and then a milled pocket clip on the back here.
That looks so good.
But
If the compression lock was more friendly, man, I would have everyone because that's such a
right,
great lock.
you would think it would be like a pretty lefty friendly lock.
It's just once you switch it, like you don't have the same kind of grip
Ah,
on the other side, and so it's kind of tricky. I mean, some guys do it pretty well, but um, no, that's the thing, and that's really why I got I was able to work with Ben is I'm a knife guy. I was a customer, but actually before I even started working for Ben, I bought maybe 4 or 5 of his knives before we even started working together. So
right. Right. I was actually going to ask about that because it's an interesting story that I think a lot of people who are into the knife industry would probably be interested. How did you end up working with Jack Wolf?
yeah, no, thanks for asking. It's pretty it was pretty funny. Obviously, as a fan, I was looking for something that was pocketable, that was thin behind the edge, because even a lot of smaller knives were still like I had a small Sabenza 31, and I'm like, oh, I want a smaller knife, but like even that was kind of thick behind the edge. And I'm like, if I'm going to
Right.
carry a small knife, I want something that's going to be great for slicing. And come to find out, about around the same time, there were guys posting pictures of their Jack Wolves, and this was only, it was like the Sharpshooter V1, like way back, the
Right.
laid back Jack, and then it was the Midnight Jack came out. I think that was his third model. And when I saw that, I'm like, whoa, like I love it.
Right.
And I missed some of the earlier variations, but there was like a natural micarta still left at some random dealer, and I grabbed one. Um, Immediately loved the thing, and it was just such a laser beam compared to anything else I'd ever used before. Such a good slicer. But I wasn't a slip joint guy, so I started noticing like man, it's starting to get gritty. I like, it got to the point where it was like, if you don't have these things oiled,
Right.
oh man, they they get pretty rough. So I didn't know. I just hit up the Facebook group and asked somebody about it or whatever. I get a message from Ben Belkin on Facebook. He said, "Hey, give me a call." And I'm like, "Who's this guy? Like, you're the owner,
Right.
and you want me to call you?" And he does that. He does that he does that for everybody now.
Right.
If you have a question, you can call Ben up.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I
but
just came across a Reddit post where someone was posting and he's like, "Here's my cell phone number on Reddit. Like, call me."
yeah, that's his number. He doesn't have like a burner phone or anything. Like, that's
Right.
like, dude, you're crazy. And that's like we just hit it off over the phone. I thanked him for his time and amazing customer service. And then like down the road, I was just kind of noticing like this dude's doing everything by himself. He was doing all of his Instagram content and Facebook, and I had a little bit of a background in social media beforehand. I had worked consulting for companies a little bit. I worked as just a full-time Facebook marketing guy for a company. I had since gotten out of it, and I just thought, like, man, Ben's such a cool dude. Like, I noticed a lot of things that might help him. I just reached out and said, "Hey, dude, like, you want to FaceTime sometime, and I'll give you some tips." And he's like, "Yeah." And like, I gave him all these tips, and he's like, "I don't. It's just me. Like, I don't
Right.
have." He didn't have the manpower to really implement any of these
Right.
ideas. And he's just like, "Man, like, that's really cool." And like, it was really like two weeks later, I just kind of kept reaching out, as a friend. And then he's like, "Hey, like, you could help me out. You have any time?" And it turned into like, "I'll do some videos for you. You send me a knife, that'll be my payment."
Right.
And then it was like, "Hey, like, do you want to do 30 videos a month for me?" And it turned into like a side hustle. And then, dude, it just like snowballed into, a year later, he asked me and my wife to move out and move to Phoenix.
Right.
And right now, so it's me and my wife work for Ben. It's a 3-man team.
Right. So when you order from the Jack Wolf site, which probably isn't knives, but if you order, leather slips, patches, anything like that, shirts, the handwritten notes, usually your wife, right?
It has been in the past. We've kind of moved to having everything at the office. So like, it's me,
Okay.
Kim, or Ben. But yeah, it's a small but mighty group.
Yeah.
My wife does most of the like a lot of paperwork stuff, a lot
Oh,
of the
okay.
boring stuff. She she crushes that, and I still handle most of the social media side.
Right.
But together, one of the biggest things that me and my wife do is the inspections
All right.
of the
Right.
product. So once a month, maybe a little more often, we get a big old batch of knives, and I look at all of them under a glass and just
Right.
look them over and walk and talk and actions and oiling and cleaning and make sure they're good to go.
Have you done a video on like the QC process of one of the knives?
No, we should. That's a good idea.
Yeah,
Um,
we did the ProTech factory tour back in December. I think we're trying to do another one, but back in
nice.
December, and their QC process was super interesting. One thing that was really interesting on there is that they do the spine whack test. There was a big
Yeah,
controversy on YouTube of should you or shouldn't you, and they said, they do it on every single one. If it fails, it's out.
that's really neat to know, because that's something we started doing too. Until it just stopped making sense because, you know, I'll do every once in a while. If I notice a lockup isn't the way I like it, I'll
Right.
start spine whacking, you know, to a reasonable degree. And that's been great. I don't know if I've even had one fail. The original gunslingers, I think those weren't as good as the newer ones. I hate to
Right.
say it like that. But we wanted to make sure going forward that, hey, like it's going to pass the spine whacking test. Although I don't see it being useful for anything, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that's why I
Um,
never really incorporated it. I tested it on a couple knives. My MSI for Microtech actually failed it.
oh
Um,
wow.
but 99% of the time, I'm not doing anything that would fail a lock in that capacity. So, not super
Yeah.
relevant to me. But
I mean, our reasoning with it was too. It's like, well, I mean, you could drop a knife tip down into concrete. Is that the tip strength test? I mean,
right.
there's a lot of things where it's like, okay, is that ever going to happen for these kind of cutting tools? You know, I'm not gonna, I don't know, cut into something so hard where I'm yanking in the reverse motion to where it's gonna lock is gonna fail. And we've never really failed a lock in a
Right.
natural setting. I mean, I take them against the table, and I just like, boo, 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 and they're as good as can be.
Right. Right. We have a question here from Elon, from across the pond over here. But have you considered tumbling the titanium bolsters in brass or copper, which creates a really cool look? Love the look of that.
Interesting. I don't know if I've seen that. So it's taking the titanium and then it's like
It,
creating a brass or copper effect. Like they
it,
tumble the titanium in those materials.
yeah, exactly. And it does create like a little bit of the coloration as well, but it's going to have a stonewash type finish.
Interesting. I don't think I've seen that before. That's a good question and maybe something we can try. Is it can anyone share a knife that has those finishes? Then I can maybe check them out.
I can't think of one offhand, but I'll try and find one and send you one later.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. I didn't know that was a thing. I
Right.
know, you know, people definitely asked us about like full copper or full brass scales or something like that. That would be cool too.
Right. Yeah, I would love that too, actually.
Yeah. Me and Ben have a little bit of a hatred of like, you know, penny smelling hands or copper smelling hands. It's kind
Yeah, that is
of
a big
sneaky.
downside.
Mhm.
When I first got into like copper and brass, I was like, okay, this is cool. The weight, is whatever. But that smell was what really deterred me. And then eventually I just kind of got over it, I guess. But I love a copper carry now.
It was a real big trend for like the replacement PM2, you know, Para 3 scales. Like that was like brass and copper. And I don't know if like the trend kind of died down. You don't see as many like, you know, brass knives coming out.
Right. Yeah, my other PM2 actually is copper with the shipwreck finish.
Oh, nice. Was that one of the linerless ones?
No, no, it wasn't linerless. It was an SMKW customization from their custom shop,
Nice.
and it's so heavy because the PM2 is already such a bulky knife. It's just so heavy in copper, but I love it.
No, it's cool. It's over the top.
Another question: has your OEM started experimenting with MagnaCut at all?
That's a good question. I don't know about MagnaCut specifically. There are some other cool steels they have worked with. The issue with MagnaCut is needing to get really a large amount shipped over
Right,
from the US. So making that worth the while has kind of, you know, been the toss up for us. Um, you know, we're not
right,
really convinced that everyone is like enamored with MagnaCut as it kind of was out the gate. You know, kind of comparing it to, you know, M390. Is it really that much better?
right,
Is it just a new cool steel with a new cool name?
right, and
And
especially
then,
I guess as thin as you guys are doing the edges and stuff, so it's a little bit of a
yeah,
harder steel, obviously.
it's an
Um,
interesting, you know, conversation with blade steels, right? Because, you know, you can say a blade steel is really cool, but at a particular heat treat or even at a particular, you know, blade geometry or, you know, thinness behind the
right,
edge, is that blade steel all of a sudden not as good as it would be on a completely different type of knife? So we have to keep these things in mind a lot with our style, and especially the slip joints, the thinner you know edge, or the
Right.
blade geometry. S90V has been really really good for us. It's performing really really well.
Right. Right. And so that's something we're seeing a lot on like the Gen 2s. How close are we to Gen 3 releases? I would imagine there's like so much new stuff in the works with like fixed blades and locking models that maybe a while before, if something's already had a Gen 2 and you missed it, maybe
Oh
a while
man,
before we see it again.
that's a really good question. Gen 3, I think the only thing I would think of is like going back and seeing Gen 2s that are, sold out across dealers.
Right.
Um, thinking off the top of my head, I'm not dropping any secrets, but like even the second run of Gunslingers we did really crushed. People love that knife. I feel like it's becoming our like flagship model
Right.
almost. So I feel like maybe that one would be the closest to something like that. But
Right.
but yeah, that's something crazy to think about that I never even would have thought about,
Right.
6 months ago. Is a Gen 3, yeah, that we're time marches on.
At some point, yeah. Yeah. Speaking of Gunslinger too, this is probably my favorite titanium finish that you've done so far. It's so good.
I love to hear that, man. That's me and Ben. I remember sitting down and we're like, you know, what about this? What about that? And, trying to match the aesthetic of a knife, really
Right.
having like, it looks like a pistol or a rifle grip,
Right.
that texture is like, oh, like, let's do that. And sure enough, I mean, he got on the drawing board, and it turned into what is now. And it's such a cool finish.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm a sucker for titanium and blue hardware for some reason,
Oh
so
yeah.
it worked out especially well for me.
We should get you one of these and just swap the hardware a little bit, because this one is a little, it's like it's that diamond finish, but it's
Right.
flatter. It doesn't have quite the, let's see.
Maybe not as aggressive of a grip.
Yeah, I know it's always hard to see these things. My camera's not the best, but um, and for some reason these full titaniums, I know, I'm sure like your checkered one, they just really, they sound so good.
Right. Yeah, just reverberates a little bit different than anything with the covers, I think.
Yeah, and it's not that much more titanium that's milled out. I don't know why they're so much louder.
Right. Oh, here, Illuminati, one of our moderators, just shared the Spyderco with a copper wash on it. So I'm going to pull it up real quick.
Interesting.
Maybe. There we go.
Oh,
So here
so
you can see
that's
it's a
on the
copper wash of the
blade.
blade. But I think you could do it. You could do it on the bolster as well, just onto titanium. But yeah, got
Watch.
kind of a real wicked look to it.
Yeah, I honestly haven't seen that. I mean, like just looking at that picture, it's like almost looks like it's rusted out, but obviously it's not. But how cool.
Yeah, super cool.
And I think that's one of my favorite things that we get to do is, I mean, really, it's almost like semi-custom work. The combinations are so random and unusual compared to what you would see from maybe a normal, mass-produced knife.
Yep.
Thankfully, doing the smaller batches that we do, um, we really can get creative and pretty unique.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I feel like I've seen it a lot more with the fixed blade too, is that it's something that people are more comfortable customizing, I think. Just like the grips or the sheaths. I've seen a lot of different sheaths come out, a couple different grips come out. And so
I love
definitely
it.
something where it's also maybe a little bit of a lower price point on the fixed blades. They're a little more willing to experiment.
Yeah, maybe so. I definitely challenge someone in our group, but like I want someone in the Facebook group. If you're not there, anyone here to check out Jack Wolf Knives Worldwide on Facebook. It's a cool crew. But if anyone's a modder or anything like that, we definitely have a group that would be into it. Different screws, different backspacers and clips, whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I know we're running up on time. We're actually a little bit over time, but I wanted to hard cut off at 6:45 because I know Ben's going live over on Lefty EDC. So if you want to migrate over there after. But while we have a few minutes left, anything else you want to plug? Anything you want to talk about with the drop? Anything we didn't touch on?
No, just we appreciate you guys for joining in, and really our drop is tomorrow at it's 11 a.m. Pacific and 2 p.m. Eastern time. So 2 p.m. Eastern, it's going to be dropping across the board. If you are looking for the exclusive, this is, the Ultim variation is only at DLT Trading. But then, of course, the other 4 variations are pretty cool as well. A couple belt satin versions, the one you have, the Mars Valley, and then the full TI, and then the White Storm. So that's going to be dropping tomorrow.
Yep, definitely. And last month, a lot of those exclusives went pretty quick. I would imagine DLT probably has similar numbers. So if you're on the exclusive specifically, try and get there. Obviously, at drop time.
Yeah, we hurt some feelings, I think, with the last one. They sold out pretty quick, and I know I hate, when someone misses out if they're really looking for one. But yeah, that's the way to do it, is be on time at
Right.
DLT if you want that exclusive.
Right. And I think Austin had said they went in under a minute. So
Yeah, and we thank you guys, because that's such an amazing thing. Obviously, our goal is to make more knives so that people aren't disappointed. But
yeah,
that something's that popular it's humbling. It's such a cool thing, man.
for
We
sure.
appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for being here. Huge thanks to Boominati Ninja for holding it down as a mod. Make sure to check him out as well. Check out Donnie on Instagram, Jack Wolf on Instagram. Link to the Facebook group a little bit. That's growing pretty quick, so check that out as well. But thanks everyone, and see you Tuesday, hopefully.
Thank you, Jake, so much. Thank you all for joining. Really
Yep.
appreciate you.
And thank you for coming on. Take care, everyone.
You too, brother. Thank you.
Yep.